Chancellor Johnson asked me to step in and play the role as the officer in charge until such time as our new president is appointed and is here on campus. As the officer in charge, I rely heavily on the judgment and experience of our executive cabinet, and I seek to have the executive cabinet come to consensus on all important decisions that impact the college. As far as our campus restart plan, which is the focus today, a little bit of background. In early April, President Amberg had established 8 separate working groups, each charged with drafting a different portion of the plan. These 8 working groups included those charged with drafting plans for fall 2020 instruction, financial management, academic success, enrollment and retention, research and graduate education, student housing, student support, facilities and operations, wellness, and faculty and staff support. On June 30th, our plan was approved by SUNY, and as Mark had noted, in an effort to communicate the key elements of our plan, we're planning a series of these virtual town hall style sessions. Today is the first and is aimed at items of particular interest to our faculty and staff. It is important to note that while our plan has indeed been approved, it remains subject to change due to information, guidance, and/or direction from New York State. I'd like to thank everyone who worked on putting this plan together. It was a tremendous amount of work, and all who participated did a great job in pulling it all together. And more importantly, I want to thank all of you who will be instrumental in helping us to make the campus safe and provide a great experience for our students as they return in the fall. Now, before I turn it back to Mark, I'd like to touch upon one last topic, which is the current state of our college finances. One of the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic is that New York State has experienced a significant loss of tax revenue. This revenue is what's used to fund not only SUNY, but all of the other various state agencies. The result of this has been a severe cash shortage across the state. And the result is that there's been a mandate by the New York State Department of Budget for all state agencies, again including SUNY, to do all they can to reduce spending and, more importantly, to conserve cash. For ESF, this has unfortunately resulted in a number of purchase requests that you've made that would normally have been approved. Under normal circumstances, they have been approved. They're now being delayed or in some cases disallowed. And again, this is due to the severe cash shortage across the state and the focus of the state to provide cash for the most important mission-critical functions that the state provides. Now, we expect to know more later this month regarding reductions in our state support funding and how those reductions might impact ESF. And as Mark has mentioned, we are planning a separate town hall section focused specifically on dealing with these fiscal circumstances and, more importantly, what they might mean for ESF. We know a few things, but there's a lot we don't know at this point. Hopefully, by the end of this month, we'll have much more information relative to the specific circumstances surrounding how these reductions in state tax support will affect ESF. And our virtual town hall session will, in fact, focus on ESF, our budget, and our fiscal outlook going forward. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And I didn't want to interrupt you, Joe, but we didn't have sound for, I think, all the way into about 4 minutes into your presentation. So I'm going to have to start over with the introductions. I'm also not getting the live feed for chat. So so just bear with us here, folks. We'll get through this. I just need to have some help so I can see the questions that might be coming in. I'm not getting the video stream on the YouTube video.
So we didn't hear your phone? No.
So just bear with us here for a second.
Should be all set.
I'm not getting it. I'm not getting any of the chat functions or anything.
Oh.
Are you getting it, David? Okay. All right, so I'm going to start over, and I guess I'm going to have to rely on Stephanie to help me understand the questions that are coming. So let me start over with the introduction. I'm Mark Lichtenstein, Chief of Staff and Chief Sustainability Officer at the college. This town hall, as Joe just alluded to, I think in the those of you who heard the end of his comments, is focused on opening of the fall semester. We are going to have additional town halls on other subjects, including a deeper dive into the budget and finance issues. But let me go back and do another quick round of introductions that you missed when the sound wasn't on. Obviously, we just heard from Joe, so we know Joe is our officer in charge, CFO, and Vice President for Academic Affairs. To his left, we have our Provost and Vice President for, Academic Affairs. Joe is Vice President for Administration, Dr. David Newman. And to his left and my right is Sue Fassler, who is our Sustainable Facilities Manager. We anticipate we'll go for about an hour and 15 minutes. We are going to take questions two ways. I just alluded to one, which is the live chat function on the YouTube channel, so I'll get some help with monitoring that so I can facilitate those questions. And the other way is to send questions to Stephanie Ospecchio, who is here and who is our Associate Vice President for Communications and Marketing. So I'm going to give you her email address. I'm going to spell it out. I'm going to do it twice slowly so you have it. It's saspecch@esf.edu. I'll say it again, saspecch@esf.edu. So you can either do it in the chat or you can email Stephanie. We are going to save the chat function so that we can go back and look at questions we might not have been able to get to during the session and make sure that we get you the answers to those. So Joe, they'd like you to start over again. I'm not sure exactly where you should end. I'm not sure where your sound first started to come in. So I guess maybe the first page and a half or so, if you would do that. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Well, I'll start again. And good morning, everyone. And I'd like to thank everyone who's chosen to join us this morning. My name is Joe Rufo. I'm the college's Chief Financial Officer and Vice President for Administration, while also temporarily serving as the college's officer in charge. Now, some of you may be wondering what exactly an officer in charge is. Well, simply put, in the absence of a president who is formally appointed by the SUNY Board of Trustees, the officer in charge is an individual designated by the SUNY Chancellor to serve as the college's chief administrative officer. When President Amberg returned to Upstate Medical University, SUNY Chancellor Johnson asked me to step in as the college's officer in charge until such time as our new president is appointed and here on campus. As officer in charge, I have and will continue to rely heavily on the judgment and collective experience of our executive cabinet, and will seek consensus among the executive cabinet members for all important decisions that impact the college. As for our campus restart plan, some background on that. In early April, President Amberg established 8 separate working groups charged with drafting various elements of the plan.
Joe, I've gotten feedback that this is where they could start to hear you before.
Okay.
So I think you're good. Thanks
Okay.
to Dave DC
Thank you.
for pointing it out to me. I can now see the questions. So, all right, that was a little awkward, but hey, we got those, got that all worked out. So, with that, I want to turn to Dr. Newman.
Good morning. So what I wanted to do today was to talk about the restart and how our planning has gone and sort of what our expectations are for the fall. As you might expect, there were a number of issues before we were able to get started, and I sort of want to go over with them with you. First off was getting plan approval from SUNY, and there a lot of people were asking what are we going to be doing? What are we going to be doing? Throughout much of May, throughout June, the question was, what are we going to be doing? And we were told very, very explicitly multiple times that we couldn't say anything about what we were doing, that we could not get out ahead of SUNY. And so that's what we did. And so last week, we finally got approval from SUNY from the restart plan that we had put together, and we sent out the announcement with the restart plan, and saying at that time that we would be able to start these meetings. So that was important and a really good piece of news that we could finally start to plan. A key aspect of our restart had to be dealt with the fact that we are so closely related with Syracuse University. A number of us have weekly communications with the folks at Syracuse University. They've included us in their planning. We've been including them in our planning. And it was very necessary for us to be working with them. And we'll talk about some of the impacts of that as we move along. An important consideration that we've had to deal with in putting together our restart plan has been the impact on classroom utilization as a result of social distancing. And again, I'll go through that in a lot more detail, but basically the amount of occupancy in a classroom will be reduced anywhere from 50 to 80%. And so that has a huge impact on how we can deliver classes. Very importantly, working through the chairs with all faculty, we've been trying to identify the faculty preferences for teaching modes. There are stories of institutions in which the provost is telling faculty how they will be teaching. We are not doing that. We're working with the faculty to find a method in which they are comfortable in terms of how they're going to be teaching. And again, we'll be going a little bit more into that, but it's very important that we have not been trying to push any specific modality on faculty. We want you to feel comfortable in how you're teaching and how you will be interacting with our students. Finally, there were just some questions about what are going to be the impacts on enrollment. So far, the impacts seem to be not as large as many thought would be the case. Our entering class right now is sitting at around, I think, 510 to 515, somewhere in that size. That's including freshmen and transfers, which really was about where we used to be before the big rise in enrollment 2 years ago. And so I think we've had pretty good success with this. And so we're expecting a good size incoming class. We're expecting good retention of students. We haven't heard anything to the contrary yet. And finally, well, not finally, next to finally, Marshall Hall remodeling has dominated a lot of our thoughts for the past year. It's actually now coming to fruition. We have, most people have been, everyone has been moved out of Marshall, and the planning for where landscape architecture is going to go and where environmental studies is going to go and where general education is going to go is pretty well settled. But we had to take that into account in our planning because we're losing the Marshall Hall auditorium and we're losing classrooms in Marshall. So that had a big impact on our planning. And finally, overall was just the chaos of budget right now. The fact that we haven't been able to make purchases in the same way that we've done in the past, that we've had to put a lot of restrictions on spending and other activities. So it's been a long process to get us to this point right now. So we did have some priorities with regards to our decision making. Our first decision, and this was key, was that we would be a residential campus, that we wanted students to come back onto campus because we feel it's important for their academic success, but we would allow for a variety of teaching modalities. Secondly, that we would prioritize health and welfare of students, faculty, and staff. And so for that reason, Sue Fassler is going to be talking later about some of the things that we're doing to try and ensure people's health and welfare. Our third priority was that we would allow for a flexibility in teaching modalities, and that would be determined by the faculty and not by administration. And we did have finally an emphasis on that our skills training, those field courses and labs, as much as possible would be done face-to-face. So the first thing that we have to talk about in joining with Syracuse University in terms of delivery of course programming. We had to pretty much fall in line with their academic calendar. Our planned academic start this year was supposed to be August 31st. Syracuse University early on announced that they would be moving to an August 24th start. And so the fact is we have about over 2,000 credit hours of courses being taken at SU by our students. So it was extremely important that we had the same schedule as Syracuse University. So our classes will also be beginning on August 24th. Now, one of the implications of that, and I want to emphasize this, is that when we had set up our academic calendar at the end of last year, we had planned that the contract period would start August 24th. Since classes are now starting August 24th, that becomes a little bit hard. So what we have done, and we've worked with Matt Smith and the union, is that the contract period for faculty will be starting August 19th. This still is within less than 10 months for the contract period, so we didn't see this as a huge imposition on faculty. And the fact is the semester will be ending a full week shorter than we had planned. So classes begin on August 24th. Classes will be held on Labor Day. That will be treated as a floating holiday for people. If they choose to take advantage of it, it would be a holiday. Otherwise, they could use it at another time. In order to meet the credit hour requirements, we will also have 3 class days on the weekend. Saturday, September 5th, for classes that take place on Wednesdays. Sunday, October 25th, for classes that take place on Thursday. And Sunday, November 8th, for classes that take place on Friday. We had to do that in order to get a sufficient number of credit hours in order to meet our obligations. Coursework ends November 24th, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and all students will be expected to leave at that time. Reading week will follow after Thanksgiving, and then finals will begin with the semester ending September 9th. We're looking, if we're able to hold commencement, we would hold commencement on that Saturday before the 21st. That's 21st, I guess. And so it's a shortened schedule for classwork. Very importantly, that finals would be given online. But we feel that this is the safest for our students and for faculty and staff by getting students to leave and not come back after fall break. So with regard to teaching options, faculty have expressed a strong interest in student interaction, which is fully what I would expect from our faculty. Part of the reason people like being here is they like the interactions with students. So we have 3 modalities of teaching that we're using. Face-to-face, which is only really going to be available for smaller courses, probably less than 20 students. About 17% of our courses, from the information that I have right now, are expected to be face-to-face. About 40% have chosen what we're calling the flex hybrid, in which the classes would be held in class, but only part of the students in the class would attend each session. And depending on the size of the classroom, ideally we'd be able to split the class in half, with half attending one day and the other half attending the next. And like I said, right now about 40% of our classes are listed as flex. And finally, we're pure online courses, and these are primarily large lecture courses, really courses larger than over 100 will almost assuredly have to be online courses because we do not have rooms large enough to even pull flex off on very large courses. And right now, about 32% of our courses, that's heavily on the large lecture courses, and a number of the general education courses, particularly the math courses, are being set up as online only. This is a message to faculty. We are finalizing the schedule now. If you are planning to change what you had told your chair, I need to know it because we're going to be assigning classrooms. We have to get this information out very, very soon, and we need to know what people are planning to do. So if you can contact your chair and contact me with regards to your plans for teaching. If there's been a change from what you had before, I need to know that. So I talked about the impact on teaching spaces, and this is, it's happening in a number of different ways. The loss of Marshall is large, but Syracuse University has been willing to work with us, and so a number of our larger lecture classes are scheduled to be housed at rooms on the Syracuse University campus. Those they have the same type of space or capacity limitations that ours does, and so we'll be working with Charles and with Leslie in terms of allocating how those spaces will be used. Also, as a result of Marshall being closed, the whole of landscape architecture will be moving downtown to space at 224 Harrison Street. And we're really kind of excited about it, but it is going to be a challenge of dealing again with social distancing and trying to maintain space. The social distancing, like I said, reduces classroom space. 5 ILIC goes from, in a normal sense, would have up to 149 students. With social distancing, it's reduced to 29 students. 146 Baker goes from 131 students to 27 students. So rooms in which you have fixed seating become extremely problematic for social distancing. The smaller classrooms that we have in which we have flexible seating, we are able to have a higher percentage of students in there because we can move the chairs around. But again, they're still limited by on the order of 50%. We will be using Gateway A and B as our largest classroom, and that has 42 seats. So that, when you're thinking of how many students you can handle, 42 is about as large as we can do on our campus. We do have a number of safety requirements, and Sue will be talking more about these. Key to everything is we will be maintaining social distancing in the classrooms to as much as we can within hallways and other spaces as well. Masks will be required for all students in classrooms. The instructor can make a decision for themselves about whether it'll be necessary to be wearing a mask. They will certainly be further than 6 feet away from students. And so it may be necessary for just for ease of understanding for the instructor not to wear a mask, but that decision is up to the instructor. For chemistry labs, because wearing goggles with a face mask can often cause fogging of the goggles, which is itself a safety hazard, we have already purchased about 1,000 face shields that students will be using for any labs that are involving chemicals. We will also be having to have additional labs because of the reduced density in those labs. There will be a shared responsibility, and I know Sue will be talking more about this, for sanitizing at the end of class. Some of that responsibility will fall on the instructor, some may fall on the students, but when people leave classrooms, there will be spray bottles with our goop, and we will use that to clean the rooms. For field labs, one of our really significant concerns is the reduced bus capacity. We're going to reduce bus capacity to 50%, which will cause a lot of just logistical problems in terms of how you get classes out there. But again, our primary concern has been the safety of both students and TAs and faculty with regards to how we would conduct these activities. One last thing, all of our advising will have to be virtual. Relatively few faculty members or advisors have rooms large enough to actually do much face-to-face advising. And so we're working on getting online score sheets as well as online petitions for students. A final thing related to safety is that even if a course is being planned to be face-to-face, there is a not insignificant likelihood that a student in their class may be quarantined. And so if that's the case, it will be necessary to be able to provide instruction for those students. And so there needs to be preparation for online delivery. Also, again, we don't know what will happen with the virus on our campus and in the state over the coming months. And there could be, again, a situation that, like what happened in the spring, where we're forced to move all online. And so faculty have to be at least aware of this and have within their planning that this may occur. So that's the end of the things I have prepared. There is again, a lot of planning that has been going on this. I've been having weekly meetings with the chairs. I've been having a number of meetings with other folks who have been trying to come to grips with the problems that we have in setting up our program. What was sent out, the announcement about the startup plan explains in a lot more detail what it is we're doing, and I encourage you to take a look at that. And again, I'm happy to answer questions over now as well as by email in the future. But thank you. And really, this when I echo what Joe said, I appreciate all the effort that faculty and staff have been putting in terms of getting ready for the fall. This is very uncharted waters for us, but I believe we can create a very strong program for our students. And again, I thank you for that. Mark?
Okay, I'm just trying to respond to some texts questions I'm getting, but thank you very much, Dr. Newman. Stephanie, I'm receiving all the questions via chat. Yeah, thank you very much. All right, there's quite a few people that have joined after our introductory comments. I'm not going to go through everything again, but I do think it's important to restate who's here. So again, we're joined by our officer in charge, Joe Rufo. We just heard from Dr. Newman, who was our provost. Next, we're going to hear from Sue Fassler, who was our sustainable facilities manager. We will go probably till 12:30 now because we had a little bit of a late start. Again, there's two ways to post questions. I do have a bunch of questions in the chat box. I will definitely be getting to those. We want to let Sue do her presentation first, and then I'll get to those questions. The other way to send questions, I'd like to restate this, is you can send it via email to our Associate Vice President for Communications and Marketing, Stephanie Specchio, and that is, I'm going to say it again slow, SASPECCH@esf.edu. I also forgot to mention, it should be obvious, we're social distanced here in Gateway. Dr. Newman, your PowerPoint didn't come on until about halfway through your presentation, so a question did come up that I want to address right now. Yes, we will make available all the documents, the PowerPoint, the documents that Dr. Newman has referred to. Those will all be made available to everybody. With that, I'd like to turn to Sue. Sue?
Great, thank you. So I am the Sustainable Facilities Manager, and will be giving a quick primer on some of the work that the operational staff have been planning in the custodial, the mailroom, shipping and receiving, and in the vehicle, so in the garage vehicle reservation realm of things. We're keeping it pretty high level, but I'm definitely happy to drill down into detail, which is my favorite, as questions start rolling in. So on the custodial end of things, I would like to echo what Dr. Newman said. A safe built environment is really a shared cleaning responsibility. At the best of times, we're quite leanly staffed operationally, so our custodial staff are going full tilt with normal routine cleaning. I'll discuss in the next slide some of the things that have been added to the normal cleaning routine, but it will necessitate some help from our general campus community as well. So we would like to first minimize the outside use of chemicals. So chemicals that are effective against COVID-19 are on the EPA's list N. So it's a special designation. So we have no way of knowing if a product that someone is bringing in from their home is impactful against COVID. We would hate to be in a situation where we think we're doing the right thing, but in actuality we're not. So the chemicals, the disinfectants that we will be providing to the campus community have been vetted. They meet effectiveness standards, and they also do not have a strong scent. So that's something that's really important, because we do know we have a lot of people with a fragrance sensitivity or an allergy. So if anyone does ever have any issues with what we're using, please bring that to our attention. So as we're asking people to help with cleaning, of course, we have to empower you to be able to do so. So we will be providing disinfectant and microfiber cloths available upon request. The goop, which Dr. Newman referred to, as I mentioned, is List N certified. It's effective against COVID-19, and we have very, very large quantities of not only disinfectant, but bottles and spray triggers, which for a while were the limiting factor. So we do have a really great stock. I want to give a big shout out to Deb Faust, our supervising janitor. She's done a phenomenal job purchasing things here for our campus and also all of the ESF campuses. So we are tracking where we deploy disinfectant and microfiber cloths on campus. You can email Deb Faust. Her email will be on the slide that hopefully you can see, but will be shared. And we also, all of this information in much, much more detail will soon be online in a general COVID FAQ section. So returning back to the idea of shared cleaning. Custodial staff will disinfect high traffic areas at least twice a day. So these are areas like bathrooms, classrooms, break rooms, communal spaces, computer labs, and libraries. But it's also very important to note that even though custodial staff are disinfecting twice a day, it's also a shared campus responsibility. And there will be disinfectant and microfiber cloths in these locations, so you will be able to disinfect as well behind you after you're using a space or before you use a different space. A full list of these areas will be online. So there's a whole suite of these areas that custodial staff will be disinfecting twice a day. They will be online. They will also be doing the high touch point areas like handrails, light switch plates, doorknobs, drinking fountains, as often as they walk by, which will be very frequently. We're also tracking what is disinfected on a daily basis per New York State guidance, and there will be a hanging list of the disinfectant log in each restroom and also in the classrooms. So again, the campus community will also be responsible for disinfecting communal spaces. So classrooms will be disinfected between each use. So this will be a joint effort between instructors and students. So for some of our larger spaces on campus, like ILIC 5, in areas where there's a large swath of fixed seating, I think it's only 3 or 4 spaces on campus, we will be providing wipes, because it would be very time intensive to potentially go through and spray disinfect. So the classrooms with wipes, those areas will be disinfected by students upon their arrival to class. For the vast majority of classrooms, disinfectant spray and microfiber cloths will be provided. So professors or instructors at the end of class will spray everything down. It's very quick. You can spray it. It has a 10-minute dwell time, so this is the period between class. So we're hoping that students will socially distance prior to entering the classroom to allow the disinfectant to do its job. As students enter, they will either use a microfiber cloth or a paper towel to wipe down the surface if needed. Probably too much detail here, but compost is my thing. So we will not be able to compost these paper towels because they have disinfectant on them. So there will be signage for that. So this is the level of detail that we've been planning for. We're always keeping sustainability and the college in mind even as we plan for these differences. So this is a really important one. Our custodial staff are some of the most important people on campus always, but especially now. And as with any human life, we want to keep people safe. So if you see a custodial staff member about to enter your office or your workspace, we ask that you please put on your mask. The way I've been kind of thinking and talking about mask use is consent. So I will always err on the side of wearing a mask, and if I enter someone's space, if they give me a cue or if they let me know it's okay to remove your mask, I will do so. So I would encourage everyone to think like that. And please verbalize and show your appreciation, not only to our custodial staff, but the entire operational staff. They have been here working it for months. They've been extremely flexible. Everything has just been constantly changing, and they have met these changes with a great attitude, asking a lot of questions, providing a lot of insight. So I personally want to thank everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure working with our operational staff, and I would encourage everyone upon return to campus. I'm sure it will be more hectic than it is in the summer, but tensions may run high, but let's please remember to have some empathy towards the people helping us, the glue that keeps the college together. So shifting gears to mailroom and our shipping and receiving. Mail and packages are not disinfected when they arrive on campus. SUNY nor the CDC recommends this, so this is not an extra step that we're taking. However, our staff will have disinfectant and microfiber cloths and or wipes with them at all times, so when they enter a space, they'll also be wearing gloves. They have the ability to disinfect. So the goal of delivery of both mail and packages is to minimize contact and face time with individuals on campus. So luckily for us, our mail delivery system, this was already baked in. So our mailroom staff delivers to a few mailrooms on campus and then very designated areas and offices. They do not enter every space. So our mailroom operations won't be changing in that way. Package delivery is a little bit different. There are often times where things are delivered to individual offices, and the default is that this will continue, but with disinfectant and microfibers. However, if someone is not comfortable with that, if you prefer to pick something up from our warehouse, if you prefer something be dropped off at a different location, please direct these questions and concerns to Linda Bacon. She's very responsive and she's phenomenal. So please reach out to Linda if you have any concerns about the mailroom or packages. So on to vehicle reservations, which is my last topic. Vehicles are still able to be requested, but I would implore you to please always download the most recent vehicle request form, which has changed already numerous times this summer, so we always want to make sure you're using the right form. And this is on ESF's Vehicles and Busing webpage. Vehicle occupancy, including everything, more than just buses, vehicles, period. Occupancy has been reduced by 50%, so rounding down. So if you have a 5-passenger vehicle, it is a 2-passenger vehicle. You must wear a mask if you're within 6 feet of another passenger or your trip is over 15 minutes. Vehicles are disinfected by garage staff between trips, and there is a nice laminated placard stating this fact and kind of outlining the areas that are disinfected as you get your vehicle. So finally, physical barriers will not be installed in vehicles. This is something that was brought up a lot at the beginning of the semester, and if you install kind of an aftermarket barrier that wasn't necessarily planned for in a vehicle, that could cause a whole suite of safety concerns. So we will not be installing barriers. We're opting to distance rather than create barriers. So reoccurring bus trips such as labs. This is really, as Dr. Newman mentioned, this is going to be a complex one, but we're already thinking it through in great detail, and so there will be assigned seating for the entire semester. So for a reoccurring lab, the course instructor, we've created a bus template, which is online for our 24-passenger bus, and we'll be creating and putting the same templates online for our external busing vendors. So this will be downloaded by a course instructor. Students will have to be assigned a very specific seat that they will have for the entire semester. And we're doing this to ensure that we are able to contact trace in the unfortunate event of a positive case or a suspected positive case. So those tools will all be online. I'll mention again the FAQ documents. I think they're going to be extremely helpful. I'm someone who learns better from reading and seeing and writing, so I think it'll be a great resource for everyone. So hopefully not too much detail, but I'm always happy to go into more. Back to you, Mark.
Great, thank you very much, Sue, for that. I am going to now go through, we have a bunch of questions I really appreciate. But I'd first like to say we've got some really creative stuff going on here, Sue. I hope I didn't distract you by my laugh, but we have some members of our community that we're we're trying to come up with a catchy phrase. So, and I'm not going to name people by name, but I know some of you can't see this, but you know, we have lug your mug, pack your plate. What are we going to do? So we've got wipe your workspace, leave no trace, clean the place, leave no trace, clean your space, mask, don't make the mask. So anyway, we've got some good creative stuff going on here, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to focus on some of the questions for you, Sue, first, and then we'll go to Dr. Newman. So give me a second just to scroll down through here. There weren't a lot, but let's see. All right, one was, should the cloths be disposable? It seems unsanitary to reuse these cloths without washing them.
That's such a good question. I meant to mention this, but I forgot. So every single building right now has 2 microfiber bin collection areas, and that will also be on the website. Every single building has one, and we're asking that once a week people drop off the microfiber cloths in the need to be cleaned bin, and there will always be a supply of clean microfibers for campus use. So thank you. That's a great question.
And it was answered by somebody else later on too, so good, okay. Well, I don't see any other specific for you, but I might be missing something. So I'm going to go back to the top. Just give me a second to scroll back up here. So Dr. Newman, there are a bunch for you as we expected. So the first one is, are you working with grad instructors to work with their online versus in-person teaching preferences?
Again, it's the difficulty of a closed campus, and I haven't worked as much with graduate students, really. And it is a necessary thing that we're going to have to do. My expectation is that the grad instructors, TAs, will be working with the instructor. My expectation is that the instructor is going to take the TA's preferences into account with regards to course delivery. As much as possible, we'll be doing virtual for help sessions and other things like that. There may be some of our classrooms that may become available, but it's going to be a challenge being able to bring groups of students together in order to do recitations and to do help. And so, again, my expectation is we're not going to be asking things of our GAs that we're not asking of our faculty, and so that their safety concerns we will be taking into account just as much as our faculty and our students.
Okay. And that kind of addressed a few of the other questions, and there was one question about whether we've met with the grads and undergrads, and I know that is our intention to do that for both you and Joe.
It's just been a challenge with not very many people around.
Right. Okay. All right. There have been a couple questions about the schedule. So the dates, when you talked about SU, the weekends, we're going to be in symmetry with the dates.
These are the dates that Syracuse University is using. I saw one of the questions was asking about would a Wednesday lab also, or a Thursday lab or a Friday lab, and I don't expect this is a problem for the labs. This has to do with total contact hours, and so we have 14 weeks of classes going from August 24th to November 24th. So my expectation is that we wouldn't reschedule the labs on that Wednesday or Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, these are the exact same dates as Syracuse University is using. And to be honest, there's flexibility on this. This can be done as an asynchronous event where students don't necessarily have to be in a classroom on that Saturday or Sunday, or the faculty for that matter. There's a variety of ways in which meeting learning objectives for a course can be done without actually physically trying to hold a class on that Saturday or Sunday.
Okay. All right, shifting to a somewhat different topic. How to guarantee access to online final exams for students who have limited internet access at home?
That one is a challenge. We know that. We experienced it this past spring. My expectation is that since now this is known, that faculty will be planning for this with their students. And if a student identifies that they have a problem, that the faculty member can work with them to determine how they're going to be able to meet the final exam responsibilities. The safety issue for us was very important. Of when we send students away, we don't bring them immediately back because of the concerns of bringing the virus back from different regions. So since we know this, I'm really counting on the creativity of our faculty to be able to solve this problem.
Can you talk a little bit more about our international students? There have been a couple of questions there. We know we're monitoring the situation right now, some of the statements out of Washington, but there was a specific question about international students who can't get here for the start of the semester. Will they still be able to take courses, or will they have to be online?
Well, if they're not here, the only way they could do it would be online. We have a real problem particularly for graduate students, in that we have gotten a ruling from Syracuse, from SUNY and from SUNY HR, that a student actually has to be in the country in order to have a GA. Even if they could fulfill the responsibilities of a GA, they have to be in this country. And so, because we would be violating tax laws and stuff that I don't fully understand. And so I know we have a number of graduate students who return to their home country over the summer and are unable to get back into the U.S. right now because of travel restrictions. There's just not a lot we can do about that. For undergraduate students, international students that returned, they should be able to go online. And that, again, this points back to the issue for instructors of, if they have students that are not able to be on campus, that they may need to be able to provide online instruction for them. Another situation that is developing, and this one's really, we can look at this as an opportunity if we'd like, is that there are a number of students who don't feel comfortable about coming back onto campus for health reasons. Particularly their parents don't feel comfortable about it. And while we may disagree with it, that we think we can provide a safe environment for them, they still would rather, if they could, if all their courses online, that they just don't have to come back to campus. And I don't have a final answer for that, but my expectation is that we are going to offer that opportunity to all of our students. The final thing with regards to international students and the recent statements that have come out of from ICE and from the president are, we will do everything in our power to make sure that students are taking at least one face-to-face course. That opportunity will be there for students to take face-to-face course or a flex course, so that we will meet those requirements. We don't have a huge number of undergraduate international students. We have more graduate international students. And the graduate students are already pretty well taken care of through research credit hours. But for the undergraduate students, we just have to make sure, and that's just the role of advising, to make sure that the students are taking courses that have a face-to-face component.
All right, let's talk about quarantining and worst-case scenarios. So first of all, what are we thinking about in terms of quarantining for students coming from out of state? What happens if an instructor or TA needs to be quarantined? And then going to the end of the spectrum, what happens worst-case scenario where, and we don't even want to put this out there into the ethos, but that we would have to shut down for any reason. So could you just talk about those issues?
So for students in Centennial Hall, if there's a need for quarantining, we're in negotiations with OCC to use space that they're setting aside for quarantining that our students could use as well. For off-campus students, we don't have anything clearly laid out yet as to how we would handle quarantine for them. But we're still going to be working on that one. And from what I've heard, this is a problem for most institutions, is how do you deal with students that aren't paying for their housing through the university already. If faculty or grad students need to be quarantined, hopefully that they could still at least maintain their course in an online manner. If somebody gets sick and is unable to do that, then we'd have to look at how we deal whenever a faculty member or staff member becomes too ill to continue a class, and we would work with that faculty member and the department chair to deal with the delivery of the course for our students. That is not a unique situation. That happens all the time. And so we'll do our best on that. If the campus closes down, if we're ordered by the governor and SUNY that we have to halt our courses, that's what we'll do. Although we will make provisions for international students, and so wording is going to matter in terms of the directives that we get from the state. And my expectation is that will be well thought out before any statements get made.
And I think you alluded to this earlier too. If that were to happen, we would then, and let's say it happened with a lot of the semester still left, we would be then transitioning back to online.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Some technology and facility type questions. A good suggestion here about, have we considered enhancing, I think, the microphones and sound for instructors so that they don't need to make a choice of taking their mask off. I don't think we've specifically talked about that, but that's a good suggestion for us to look at.
So we're making investments in upgrading the classroom technology so that we can do streaming from the individual classes. Ross is going to, I'm going to put all the blame on him. No, I'm not putting blame, but just.
He has the ability to shut you down.
I know he
right now.
does,
Okay.
and I'm probably getting knives being thrown at me right now. But we're making the investments so that we can live stream from classrooms. There will be microphones associated with that. And again, for us, this is very new technology. And I expect we'll have some growing pains with this. But we plan to have a number of classrooms. Now, unfortunately, not all of our classrooms can we do this with. It costs us, the only classrooms we can do it with are the ones that already have the big box capability at the front of the room for faculty technology. And so for some classrooms, we're not going to be able to do that, and we're going to have to think about alternative means for accomplishing that. The SU classrooms they're doing the same thing, and so we'll have access to that technology. Yeah.
Associated with this, and I'm sorry if you addressed this, right, I don't think you did. Do we have the capability with technology to allow an instructor to be remote yet teach to a room full of students that are in residence?
I don't know. I'll work with Ross and Christopher and see if that's possible. I think it is possible, but I'll have to ask.
Could you talk about, again, the period between classes and reference what Sue had talked about with the responsibility to clean? Do we have enough time in between classes for this?
That's a real good question. I would actually like it if a faculty member, rather than for a 55-minute lecture, might stop at 50 minutes to allow for that cleaning to take place. And it would actually be good in some of our situations, if not all classes stop at exactly the same time, so that we don't have as much crowding going on in the hallways. And so we haven't laid out yet if we're going to be doing one-way hallways. A number of institutions are doing it. Our buildings are not necessarily well set up for unidirectional flow within a building. So we haven't made full decisions on that. But again, we are tied to our timetable that's been set through Syracuse University and our registrar. So we're not going to have change the start and stop times for classes. But if a faculty member wants to shorten their lecture, that is not a problem.
Okay. Well, we got a couple of questions relating to buses and transportation. Sue, you want to take a stab at this, and then I can add if we need to, because this is still an ongoing discussion.
Sure, I saw a few of them. I believe there was a question about, will our 24-passenger bus be
Right.
available? Yes, it will, and you are correct. I believe it was Colin. It will be a 12-passenger bus. So I believe there are the traditional 3 external busing vendors that we've worked with in the past. They are on board. They have sent us their COVID plans. So my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we will not be increasing the number of buses that we will be providing for lab courses, but we will not see a reduction in the level of bus service in terms of the number of buses for the semester. So, but all that busing capacity will be cut by 50%. And we're still working out how will we socially distance at the bus stop, because sometimes there's 3 or 4 or 5 buses lined up there at once. So we still need to develop signage for that, and it will be a lot of personal responsibility. We're going to have to trust that our students will socially distance and understand the need for that. Were there more specific transportation questions?
Yeah, relating to Harrison Street, but I'll get to that in a minute. But just a little background, the bus that we have referred to as the bio bus does need to be taken off the road at the end of December. It does not meet emissions control regulations, and there's nothing we can do to bring it up to speed. So we are looking at options beyond that. And we do have a working group that includes the chairs of the 2 largest departments, SRM and EFB, that rely on transportation for academics. And I know, Dr. Newman, you've been discussing this with the Chairs Council as well. So we haven't worked out all the details yet on this aspect of transportation, but we're continuing to work on it.
Can I give one plug?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Sue.
So I do believe that Barb, who is phenomenal, sent out her traditional yearly email asking for faculty or instructor input and response about what their busing needs are. So please, especially this year, if you have questions about it, now everyone should know busing capacity is cut to 50%. If you have questions, please ask, but also please really get your request to Barb in a really timely manner, because that really matters this year.
Okay. And Joe, maybe you could address the issue on transportation to Harrison Street, since you've been in contact on that. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, as far as getting our students from the main campus to the Harrison Street location, where, as you've heard, landscape architecture will be staying during the rehabilitation project of Marshall Hall, we've been in ongoing discussions with Upstate Medical University, and we're working on a plan to use or to participate in their shuttle service. They have a shuttle service which they contract for, and we've been speaking with their folks regarding providing not only additional capacity, but also tweaking the routes such that our students would be able to board those shuttles, most likely down by the P22 lot, otherwise known as Block D to some of us, and have that upstate shuttle then include a stop that would be close enough to the 224 Harrison location to provide our students the ability to get there and also to get back to campus when they need to. Some of the specifics in terms of the exact route and the timing of the number of shuttle runs that will be made is still in process, but we do have a commitment from our partners at Upstate, and we're certainly thankful for that.
Okay, great. Staying with Harrison Street, Sue, question came up about cleaning processes and supplies. Will they be available to the Harrison Street location?
Yes, disinfectant and microfibers will be provided to Harrison Street, and I have an email in to, I don't know if he's the property manager or the landlord, but we'll be meeting next week. I want to review their COVID preparedness plans in terms of cleaning frequency and custodial work, so we'll definitely be working with them to make sure that the level of service is the same.
Okay, and this didn't come across as a question, but I think it's appropriate for us to address our satellite properties too. We do have a facilities and operations working group co-chaired by myself and Joni Mahoney, and we brought this up, we bring it up almost every time we meet, but could you talk a little bit about the satellite properties too, and how we're engaging on the satellite properties, mainly in the North Country.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier in my slides, Deb Faust has been phenomenal at working with folks up there. So we've been kind of being the central ordering place for a lot of the supplies that was ever difficult to get spray triggers, and then sending them up to the various properties. We've shared our FAQs, our documents as they've been developed through multiple phases, and since they were just given the final stamp of approval, I'll be sending the final ones out this week. But we have had pretty routine communication. We've had a lot of chance to ask questions of one another and put our heads together.
And Centennial Hall as well, working with them.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. All right, question came up of whether we have a corporate Zoom account. There were some people attempting to answer that. Let's look into that one, because I know we have individual accounts. I know the Provost's office has one, the President's office has one, but this is really a question of an account that everybody can use. So let us look into that and get back to you on that, see what options we have there. All right, has there been a decision made regarding bringing in outside visitors to campus during the semester? Not sure who wants to field this one. Dr. Newman?
Talk a little bit about this. For the admissions office, everything will be done virtually. There will be no drop-ins or tours that are giving around campus. Everything will be done virtually. The expectation is that we're not going to be allowing visitors onto campus. And for those that do come, we haven't yet developed a plan for how we will test them before coming in. Again, and realistically, you think about it. We have hundreds of people who work here and at least 1,500 students who live off of campus, and so there is going to have to be some conscious activity by everybody. Right now, all faculty and staff, when they come into campus, they have to fill out a 4-question form. And it seems kind of silly because you're already on campus when you fill out that form. But basically, I mean, people are going to have to ask themselves, should I be coming onto campus today? Do I have symptoms? Have I been in contact with people who have the COVID virus? If so, you probably shouldn't be coming onto campus. And so we haven't made any decisions yet with regards to whether we're going to be taking people's temperatures or other things. We do expect that prior to the beginning of the semester, everyone will be having at least some group testing going on for the presence of the virus.
Okay, and there were a few questions on that, so I think you addressed some of those other questions we got related to that.
I think the thing that's important is we're learning a lot. Things are changing pretty dramatically. The situation now is quite a bit different than it was 2 weeks ago. Certainly, I mean, New York is in much better shape than it was in the spring, but the rest of the country, lots and lots of stuff is happening. So as we put down when we announced our plan, nothing is final. We're getting guidance all the time.
Connected to this, will all faculty, staff, and students need to be screened or complete the COVID screening survey before entering campus every day? You addressed part of this, but I think this is a little bit more of an expanded question.
We haven't decided on that one yet. Part of it is technological. Do we track this stuff directly? Having stuff turned into a common source. Right now, those forms that get filled out, it all centralizes in HR. Whether and we're just following SUNY rules on this. If we continue that into the fall, it'll still be that case, that all faculty and staff and employees will have to do this. Whether students have to do it is a whole nother question. But again, part of it, I think, is we're counting on people to think about the social good here and do a real evaluation. And it isn't like a situation that has happened in previous years. Well, I got a cold, but I still think I can come into work. No, you don't come into work. You know, if you're not feeling right and you're starting to show symptoms, you shouldn't be coming into work. And now, certainly for faculty and staff, we have the capability of working online. And right now, the telecommuting policy is running through October 2nd. I expect that it probably is going to be continued on. And so this involves working closely with supervisors and really trying to maintain communication. And to some extent, I mean, communication has been really pretty good for the majority of our faculty and staff in working with their supervisors. I think there's been more summer meetings than we've ever had prior to this, because people are having to plan and having to think about what they're going to be doing, and so that's good, but it's I know that it's just wearing on people. This is hard. This is not easy.
Okay, if the current 2-week quarantine for anyone coming in from selected states is still in existence, this question is about will there be consideration of bringing students back early to meet that quarantine?
Well, I mean, we're gonna have to rely on Department of Health on this. We're going to be, if a student is coming from these states, if in fact we're able to give them an individual test and show that that they don't have the virus, do we still have to maintain a 2-week quarantine? The guidance on this, you know, this came out last week.
Yeah.
We don't know what that means. We don't know what it's going to look like 7 weeks from now. Right now, I just know from our incoming class, the 500 students, we have 7 students who would be affected by the current quarantine. Now, admittedly, we've got returning students that are also going to be affected by this, and this doesn't count students that maybe have gone to vacation on the North Carolina coast. So, you know, we have to play it by ear, but this is where testing is going to become very important. We're working closely with Syracuse with Upstate University. They're going to be managing our tests, or at least doing the analysis for the tests. And so our expectation is that shouldn't be as much of a problem.
Okay, I'm going to give you a break, Dr. Newman, for a second and turn to Sue. But before I do that, yes, there's a question here. We'll post the answers to all the questions. So we'll go through these to be sure we've answered them all. It's possible I've missed something. If so, it's not purposeful. So we'll be sure we address each one of the questions and statements. There are some items here that are more advice. For instance, it would be good to have an institutional statement from the administration about the ICE enforcement on international student visas. So we will look at that and take that into consideration.
There has been a statement that came out from CUNY.
Yeah.
And from the Chancellor of CUNY. SUNY is in flux right now since Christina Johnson is no longer acting as a chancellor. I expect a statement to be coming out from SUNY anytime.
Okay, good. Also, we have a response from Centennial Hall staff about some of the questions I've asked, for instance, the quarantine. That just leads me to want to say that our Centennial Hall team has been on top of this, and it's part of the plan that we submitted to SUNY, so I encourage people to take a look at that plan, and you'll see a lot of the protocols and things that Centennial Hall is putting in place, so they're clearly on top of a lot of this, all of this. All right, Sue, just let me go back to my phone here for a minute. There was a question. Oh, your favorite subject is disinfectant okay to use on keyboards and consoles, or should alcohol be used? And I think this is a thing that you've been thinking about and working at. Yeah.
So it recently came to our knowledge that some people were soaking the keyboards with disinfectant and causing a lot of damage and problems. So we will be providing wipes for keyboards. But we do ask, please, what the college provides should stay on the college campus. We want to make sure that we can continually provide supplies to keep everything safe here. It is state property, so please leave it. Please do not stuff your pockets with wipes and take bottles home. We want to make sure that we're able to keep campus safe. So Short answer, we will be using wipes on keyboards, and also very specific, the teaching modules in the front, the Extron touch point, or touch screen, they cannot be touched by our disinfectant because it has ammonium chloride in it, and apparently that negatively impacts that product. So we will be providing a specialized cleaner for that, and everything will be labeled, and there's instructions that go with everything. So it'll be online, it'll be in writing. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. How are we going to be presenting information to classes before the first day of class, such as the information we've been presenting today? So has that been talked about at all, Dr. Newman? Blackboard?
We'll be preparing facts. We'll probably, and again, I've got to talk with Christopher and Ross about this once the classrooms are set up. Again, that's part of the reason that we've pushed up the start date of the contract. There will be trainings that will be provided to faculty who are going to be, and graduate students are going to be using those spaces to how to operate it. So we currently have none installed, so we can't do any trainings now, but before class we will have that available. Probably like that time between the 19th and the 24th.
Okay, we have one of our trustees on who has asked, will there be additional virtual town halls? Yes. But the suggestion here is that we consider maybe a variety of times so that others can attend. So I think that's a good suggestion.
Certainly for those that we're planning for students and families, those will be later in the day, much later in the day.
Great. Back to international students. Can new international grad students who can't get student visas in time take online classes for the fall? Did you already address that? I'm sorry if you did.
They can take online classes, they just can't get an assistantship.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I mean, just as a for instance, we expected to have about 30 students from BUCT here for our bioprocess engineering program. American Embassy in China is not open. They're not taking reservations even for visas yet. And so we believe that we can meet the needs of those students through online courses certainly for the fall and into the spring if we have to. This problem of getting visas is a serious problem. This is not just affecting us. This is affecting all international programs around the country, and we're hoping that this changes sometime soon. I unfortunately don't see much movement on that in the near term.
Staying with this discussion about online, can students choose to take all their courses online, those with and without health concerns?
More than likely, yes. We've got I need to have a meeting with the bursar and with the officer in charge and others to talk about sort of what the implications are. The tuition would stay the same. That's what we're doing with the Open Academy. Fees would probably change a bit. And so we get it, and we're actually in a situation where this may be pointing to the future for us, that I think this is going to become a more common thing where students may say, I've got a job, I'd like to be able to keep working where I am, or for whatever reason, and that if we can provide this, it's something certainly worth considering. It does imply some impacts on how faculty teach their courses, and we may not be able to do this for all programs. We still think it's important for our students to be having the opportunity for that hands-on experience in the field and in labs, and so realistically, it's easier to do it in the spring than in the fall. We have much fewer field labs in the spring, and so we're going to have to play this one by ear. But we haven't made a final decision on that. But my expectation is that there's going to be a number of students who want to do that.
Associated with this, the issue of student fees, I think the question here is, will there be any differentiation for fees related to online classes versus residential classes?
We have to talk with the bursar and figure that one out. My expectation is those fees associated with being on campus probably wouldn't have to be paid. But some of the fees associated with delivery of courses, the computer fees, some of those other things, so those would still be the same.
This, yeah. So as Joe said, we're working with SUNY on this as well. This line of discussion has opened up a series of questions. So another related question, if a course is being taught on campus, especially lab type courses, how does a faculty member deal with a student, or a TA or a GA deal with a student who wants to take the course online?
We're going to have to work on that one. We don't have a good answer yet. Right now, I know for some of the field courses, because of the limitations in buses, we're looking at, do you do a flex hybrid for your field labs where half the class goes out on the field and the other half is asynchronously having access to that through GoPros or other types of cameras. I know landscape architecture does that, SRM does that, and so I think it's going to fall on the instructor to figure out how they're going to be able to work with these students in order to accomplish meeting the learning objectives for the class.
Okay, a suggestion to consider a system by which faculty and instructors arrive prior to their class to help the previous instructor clean, and the following instructor does the same, saves time, ensures for all that the room is clean. Yeah, we can agree
I'll
with
leave that one up to you, Sue. You tell the faculty to show up early.
Came from a faculty member.
I know.
When will faculty get training on how to set up the streaming capability in the classrooms if they decide to use that technology?
Again, we don't have any rooms set up for it yet, so we can't provide the training yet. We'll ask Ross when he thinks we may have we don't even have the equipment fully in yet, so it's going to take a while. And frankly, they're going to be spending more time setting up the rooms right now than being able to do trainings. But we'll have this prior to classes.
And Ross is nodding his head yes. You talked about tutoring already, right? I think you addressed that because there's a question about if the advice is to move tutoring online, how we ensure students have access to the appropriate technology for the tutoring, like laptops. I think you talked a little bit
We've
about
talked
that.
a little bit about it. We did receive 175 computers, laptop computers from SUNY in the spring that arrived the last week of classes, so we weren't really able to help many students with those. But for students who don't have technology, we do have a number of laptops available for them. The bigger concern often is Wi-Fi connectivity. This is the social distancing and the loss of Marshall is creating concerns for us as to where students go just to study even. The library, its capacity is going to be reduced from about 240, 250 down to about 120. So there's going to be much less ability for students to use that space. And so part of the thing is, given that a number of classes are going to be online, students won't be on campus all the time. There won't be the necessity for students to be on campus as much as in a normal situation. And so we'll have to see how that plays out.
Okay. Will our computer labs be open for students without computers to do the increased amount of digital work?
The computer labs will be open, but they're going to be limited in terms of the number of people who can use them at any one time. We have to maintain social distancing in it, the sanitization, all of those things. But yes, the computer labs will be open.
All right, so we have another question about should out-of-state students come to campus early for quarantine purposes. I think we need to, this line of questions, I think we need to get more specificity out there to
Yep.
people on that. All right. what are the thresholds that might trigger a shift in campus status, open versus online or restricted? You talked about this, but I think, I don't think you did mention that it will really be the county health department.
Yes.
That will be dictating a lot of what we do if we get positive cases, right? So that would be the answer to that.
Yeah, you know, we've been asking, you know, sort of what would be the trigger? Would there be something, you know, if you had 10 cases, if you had 100 cases? You know, and remember, we're tied at the hip with Syracuse University, and they've got 16,000 students. So trying to figure that one out and separating us from them it's not going to be our choice.
Yeah. Okay. Simple question, will hand sanitizer be available in the college buildings?
Yes. So we are installing, I believe it's 46 new wall-mounted sanitizing units, but even better, John Waisel was successful in securing, we now have 2,700 small 2-ounce spray hand sanitizers. So I will be emailing department chairs, faculty and staff heads to ask them for counts. And then we'll deliver the hand sanitizer so then they can be distributed to staff. And we still have yet to figure out how to get everything to students, but we should have enough to give every single person at all of our campuses a personal 2-ounce. And then we also have bulk 1-gallon refills that we will be locating in every building. So we should be awash in hand sanitizer.
All right, I'm just scanning. I think there are other questions there. I think we already answered, but we will make sure we answer them again in writing. So let me just take a look.
Let me just
Yep, go ahead.
Neil Abrams had a question
Yeah.
here about, we are buying GoPros. Those are done generally at the department level. And so we just need to know about it.
Okay.
There's actually a significant number of these that have been purchased already. And so faculty need to talk, if they have a need for it, they need to talk with their chair.
Okay, that addresses that question. Will we continue to offer remote access to the campus desktops to access campus computers from home?
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just, all right. Got two different sources of questions here I'm looking at. So we've got a good exchange between Kim Max and Sue. Looks like you've got that settled as far as contributing supplies to Centennial. I think it looks like we've addressed most of these. Again, if you feel that your question wasn't addressed well, make sure we do that. Yeah, some of the questions that are coming up now we've already addressed. It might be that people are just chiming in. Just give me a second. I want to scan here to be sure I didn't miss any big questions. This also gives you a chance to point out if I missed something. Can staff order GoPro cameras too, or do you have to be a faculty member? I suppose it relates to what the use is for. I think you should, Joe.
Right, any type of purchase needs to be vetted through either the business office or through executive cabinet. So if there was a need for a staff individual to order a GoPro, that would go through the same process. It all depends on what the need is, and if the need meets the criteria that the state has laid out relative to our ability to spend money and the need to conserve cash.
Okay, well, with a few minutes left here, please identify if you feel your question hasn't been answered or if you have another question. I want to restate, I'm going to give Stephanie Specchio's email address again, because if you do have something that comes up after the town hall, please forward it to Stephanie and she'll be sure to get it to the appropriate person. So I'm going to give that email right now again, saspecch@esf.edu. Okay, and then one last question, will we invest in Wi-Fi hotspots for those students for whom internet access is an issue?
Haven't thought about that one yet. I mean, we have it already in most of our buildings. if this is talking about potentially putting it in parking lots or something like that, we're not there yet.
Okay, and then I want to make sure I address this because Lindy's brought it up twice. So we have a question, the question was very curious as to what the college is going to do, if not the state, in relation to the new mandate on international students studying online by the president. You address that, and Lindy is, Chair Quackenbush is saying Sean's comments relates to the fact that international students in the U.S. won't be able to study fully or a majority online. This is the opposite problem to what was already discussed.
So, again, the way, and Tom Carter has been looking into this pretty closely. And again, this is new. We're talking 2 days worth of knowledge here. Currently, like I say, for graduate students, this is not a new rule. It's always been the rule that students could not come to the U.S. and get a student visa if they were only taking online courses. You had to be doing residential face-to-face courses. So this is not new. It was just that now it's being enforced when the student has no choice in how the courses are being offered. Graduate students have always been in this situation where they may not be taking any face-to-face courses because they're in research, and so as long as they're taking an $8.99 or $7.99, $8.99, $9.99 course, they're fine. So this doesn't particularly affect graduate students. It doesn't talk about a majority of your courses being face-to-face. It just says you can't have all of your courses being online. So we're not too concerned about our graduate students with regards to this ruling. The concern is primarily for our undergraduate students, and right now we have maybe 30 international undergraduate students that are here on campus, and those advising is going to become important, and that we will make provisions to make sure that those students have access to either a flex course or a direct face-to-face course that will qualify. And whether it's a 496 or a regular scheduled course, we can make it work for them. So we're not, Syracuse University has a much greater problem because they've got a lot more international students than we do. We can work very much on a one-on-one basis with every one of these international students to make sure that there shouldn't be a problem for them.
Okay, we're winding down here. Again, if you have additional questions, please send them to Stephanie or directly to any one of us. But there is one more here that I'd like to get to, and I also want to point out that Tom Carter has chimed in from our Office of International Education, again stating that they have resources and they're prepared to help and answer a lot of these questions. So yeah, definitely, and Carrie is there too, so definitely take advantage of that. So these couple more quick questions here. Is there any indication when the governor will be making a final decision about schools and colleges definitively opening in the fall? News outlets are reporting that a final decision has not been made.
That's true. Right. What we're hearing from the aspect of the budgets and finance, mid-July, the school districts will need to understand what their funding is, and I think that will go a long way in impacting the opening and what they can and can't do. But the fact is that there hasn't been any announcement that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, I think that's it, folks. Again, we will have more of these events, and we'll be letting you know when we secure those dates, and send your questions, as I said, through the various avenues that we mentioned. We really appreciate everybody. We have a good group here. We had 195, 196 at one point, so we really appreciate you chiming in, and we're getting a lot of thanks. So I think we're good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.